Well, generally, in Western societies, independence movements are the attitude towards independence movements is negative rather than positive. So, in Catalonia, the Spanish are very opposed to Catalan independence, and it's not received any serious support really from the European Union. With Brexit and so on, Scotland will vote in a referendum, if it's given a referendum, will vote to leave. And my own view for some considerable amount of time is that Scotland will become independent from the UK. In fact, what is happening actually is a process by which the United Kingdom is slowly breaking up, because it won't be long after that, in my view, next 10 years, before Northern Ireland joins with the Irish Republic in a united Ireland, leaving the UK as essentially England and Wales. Scotland's been fighting in the modern form ever since the 1970s for independence, and it's always been treated, out of court as unacceptable by the Westminster establishment in London. And at the last Scottish independence referendum several years ago, there was a lot of heavy gun opposition wielded by the English establishment against independence, and the vote was significantly lost. Macau never had this sense of being different and independent from China. Why? Well, let's face it, Macau was not nearly as successful a colonial territory under the Portuguese as Hong Kong was under the British. I mean, the Macau economy was very weak. It was very dependent on casinos and gambling as a central part of the economy. It never became a major financial centre in the world as Hong Kong did when it was still under the British. It never had, if you go to Macau, compare with Hong Kong at that time, Hong Kong was indeed very wealthy. Macau was quite poor. And of course, you've got to look at the colonial masters, as it were. Portugal was a much weaker, small country. Its great historical period was centuries ago. Today, it's a very, and at the time of the handover, it was a weak economy. Likewise, whereas Britain was much weaker than it used to be, but still a lot stronger and a lot more important in the world than Portugal. And I think all of that, influenced the way in which the Macanese thought about themselves, and they, I think, were grateful for the handover of Macau because they saw it as opening up new opportunities for them, whereas the Hong Kong people were relatively more independent-minded, think they'd done very well, and were much more sceptical about becoming part of the PRC. The big question facing governance in Hong Kong now is how to win the hearts and minds of the Hong Kong people, how to reassure them. And that is not just a one-dimensional problem. And I think that the extradition bill, look what the extradition bill's done. I mean, in some ways it's united up to a point, a wide swathe of opinion in Hong Kong who think it's wrong, and allowed, in some way or other allowed, or these demonstrators, these hardline demonstrators, pro-independence from China and so on, to gain greater credence. So I think politically it was a huge mistake, the extradition bill, which the Hong Kong government and the Chinese government must learn from. They must not do that again, something like that, because it undoes so much that has been done already. And we're now in a worse situation at the moment in Hong Kong, in my view, than we've been, in this sense, since 1997. And so it's been since over the 20-odd years since the two territories became independent, became part of China. I mean, Macau is, I think, worked well in its new context, and Hong Kong's been problematic. It's difficult not to think that these events have also set back the reunification of China and Taiwan. So one country, two systems, and how you go about this, and what are the ways to achieve it, and so on. I thought it was a brilliant proposal. I still think it was the right one, but it's become clear that it's very complicated because it cannot be done in a formulaic way. It has to be a dynamic process.